All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to this interview with Tony. Tony, hello and welcome to you. It's such a pleasure to talk to you today.
For sure. I'm so excited to be here. We set this up weeks ago and I had to be a little bit secretive about what it is we were talking about, but I knew it would be good and I knew I wanted to have a way to talk to the author community here. And I thought this would just be the perfect way to connect. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
And I appreciate that so much, honestly. I have always been fascinated by how engaged you have always been actually even just inside our community. And I have been so thrilled to hear that you are taking over the position as the CEO, because I just feel like you have this deep desire to understand people in general, but of course, in this case, also writers and Medium's community of writers. Um, I have a lot of questions that I'm excited to share, and I'm really excited to hear what you're going to share with us. We're also going to take a look at the comments from the community. But before we dive into any of that, I just want to, officially say congrats again. And I want to ask, how are you? How have the past 2 days been? I can only imagine that you've been flooded with all kinds of messages.
It,
How are you doing?
I mean, I'm doing great. I knew, it's not just the last 2 days, it's the last 2 months I've been working on coming on board. There was an interview process, there was other candidates. I got a lot of homework assignments along the way that ended up being really relevant to the job. And so I almost feel like I've been nearly full time for a while. And the whole time, what I felt was just a sense of awe because here's this product and community that I love that I've been a part of for 10 years now. And of course, I've got, opinions on how it should be done and how we could be better and how we could grow. And um, like, wait a second, at some point during the process, I thought, oh, they might actually choose me and I might have this opportunity and responsibility. I mean, it really, every morning I just wake up with a jolt of adrenaline of like, whoa, I could come out here and really make a difference as part of Medium. So um, it's kind of like this steady state of excitement, I think, now for weeks on end.
I can only imagine. And um, this is actually one of the things I wanted to ask, because I think for a lot of people, and it's always also been the same for me, but for a lot of community members, I think it's not really obvious what kind of organization Medium is behind the scenes and what the Medium CEO is actually responsible for and what he's doing. I never wondered what Eve's responsibilities are and what kind of what is they might look like. Do you want to give a very quick insight into how many people are you at Medium right now behind the scenes, and what are you actually going to do as the CEO, just so the community understands what kind of organization you actually have behind you?
Well, right now I'm on a listening tour, which is partly why I'm here, but also inside the company because I don't completely know. I lived on the outside and I met a lot of people that worked here, but there's most of the people I haven't met yet. So I think we're 110, 111 people distributed, like where everyone works remote now. Although there's clusters around the country. And so we had an in-person meetup in San Francisco yesterday. We're going to do an in-person meetup with the team in New York next week. I'm hoping to do one in LA, hoping to do one in Paris. Like those are our big clusters, the easiest way for me to meet people face to face. So I'm still, at some level, I'm still figuring out, how does this company work?
Mm.
Um, the I think, the job is to set a strategy and make sure that people are aligned to it. And I mean, that includes the employees, but it's also, um, if we had a clearer strategy, it'd be easier for the authors to figure out, well, what is the opportunity for me here? And that, I think that's probably the primary job for me this month. And And then, as far as like the work of being in this job, it's obvious I'll spend a lot of time talking about product. And it's obvious that I'll spend a lot of time talking about author incentives and how our recommendation and distribution works, which is really about serving the readers. Like it's our job to be constantly doing the platform things that raise the bar of quality for our readers. I mean, that's what they tell us, and also, it's obvious. And then, it's stuff like recruiting and hiring and managing and making sure that people are growing in their careers and making this it's not that I make this a good culture, it's that I facilitate the people here to make this a really good culture. So I think that's my job. And then on top of that, it's really, actually, there's a lot of parts to it. On top of that, sometimes it's my role to go out and be the face of the company, as I'm doing here today, just to say, like, so people know this is a good change and it's going to be really good for the communities. I think it makes more sense when you hear it, hear it directly.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to circle back to a lot of the things you just mentioned. You said you even don't know 100% what to expect, and yet you also mentioned that the core responsibility, or one of them, is also the product. And I find it so fascinating that you've actually been with Medium for so long. You have started and grown 3 of the largest publications, and you have worked with Eve even before that period, right?
Yeah.
So you actually have known the philosophy and the purpose of Medium for quite a while now, and you've been following it like firsthand. Still, from your perspective, as someone who has been with Medium for so long and now has this huge responsibility, how do you describe Medium to someone, or how would you describe Medium to someone who is brand new to the platform? From your perspective, why does Medium even exist, and what is the core purpose of the platform?
Yeah, I think our core mission hasn't ever changed. It's to spread, great ideas and great information. And, like the language sometimes changes a little bit. I think that's not actually the exact words that we've used officially, but that. And what I like about Medium is that compared to a lot of other platforms on the internet, it's very constructive. It's about having constructive conversation. It's about doing the type of writing that builds other people up, makes them smarter, helps them grow in a career, helps them, I did a lot of self-improvement writing on Medium. When that works, it's life-changing. Even just to help you understand the world around you. It's all about making people, better humans, which is not a pun on like the publication the first publication I started, that's the name, Better Humans. But essentially, there's a lot of different ways to help someone become a better version of themselves, and that's what I like about Medium. There's like a positivity to it, that we're not about tearing people down. We're not about divisiveness per se. We're about going deeper onto topics, and I think that's partly the Medium community and culture. A lot of it is the difference between long form and short form. I think long form just encourages real thoughtfulness.
And I think it's been an exciting journey over the first 10 years. But if you look into the future, where do you see the biggest potential for Medium in the whole space, actually, whether for readers or writers? And from your perspective, what would the best case scenario be? I mean, it's always hard to look into the future, but looking at the past 10 years and envisioning the next 10,
Yeah.
what that scenario look like in your head?
Well, I interviewed on a theory of focus. Like there's some things that need to happen that if we focus on them, they actually can grow to be really big. It's hard to even fathom how much bigger they could be than they are right now. And those two things are, our base is to provide good free publishing tools. And I think that got hidden a little bit behind all the other stuff that we did. Like, for a while, people thought, oh, are you a media company because you suddenly own all these editorial sites, which now we don't own anymore, or don't really run anymore. But that just confused people, and I think people lost track of, this is a really good place to put your blog. Or if you don't have a blog, to just put an article once a year, right? And we go all the way up to hosting lots of great professional publications. Like, I was looking at all the company blogs on Medium. It's not just a company blog; it's the engineering blog and the design blog, and all of the people running personal accounts. There's like, that's a part of the internet. It's like a pillar of the internet that people want a place to express themselves. And that's always been the case for as long as I've been online. And I think that the role Medium plays is to be the easiest and simplest option for publishing. And, we know everyone has other places, but a lot of, right now, there's some differentiation. And for the people that like what we're offering, we just need to be over what everyone else offers. We just need to be really clear, what are those differences? And essentially it's free and simple, great design. Like, those are the things that we hang our hat on. And then the other piece, which also could be so much bigger, is the subscription, or what you call what we call the partner program, right? Like, readers are willing to pay for great information and great ideas and great writing. We know this. This is established. We've established it ourselves, but we see it everywhere, right? And I just think we've only scratched the surface of that. And how, my experience is, when you give great information, it's incredibly empowering to people. Like, it's life-changing. It's the kind of stuff that used to be like locked up, or it's like word of mouth kind of information. If we can get that out to the world, where you don't have to get a computer science degree to be a programmer, because you could learn all that stuff on Medium. You don't have to get a marketing degree to be a marketer, because we have like massive marketing information. You could start a company just based off of the information you could pull on Medium. And that's like, that's one tiny sliver of what happens here. And I would just like more and better. And we're like 2% of the way towards what I think we can be.
You mentioned earlier, and also in our conversation, that one of the things you really want to focus on is readers and the quality of writing readers get access to. That's a huge topic. It's something we talked about last year in another interview, right? Where you introduced as to the idea of thinking of your blog writing in terms of, or with a book in mind.
Yeah.
Do you maybe want to quickly, kind of summarize that concept and maybe share a bit more on what would that mean? What would it mean to increase the quality for readers?
Yeah.
What is the job actually, or the aspect for writers here? Because it's so hard, what I've learned over the last few years, to judge writing and to say this is high quality writing or good writing, and this is a bad article, because so much of it is subjective. So many aspects can be presented in so many different ways. I'm really excited to hear if you do have some specific ideas on what it will mean to increase the quality of the work on the platform.
Yeah, the first thing to understand, and I think all the authors here care enough to understand this, the money comes from the subscribers. Like, what is valuable to them is what brings money into the platform so that we can pay authors. So my first responsibility is to make sure the company creates incentive structures and payment structures that make a subscription that serves this, this incredibly large subscriber base that's reading articles across, I think, we have like 105 core topics, and it takes a lot to keep everyone happy and engaged there. But I'm always thinking of it through that lens. How do I help the readers, or how do we help the readers? So it's obvious. I mean, I can tell you right now, and I here partly to set the table. Like, we should be raising the quality bar in some way. People are asking for that. It's one of the top things that people mentioned in my announcement post. So what's hard to give, like, I can't just give one or two specifics because there's so many different topics. Quality is different within different topics. But I can give you an example that I'm close to, having written in self-improvement and programming and marketing. Like, for the most part, the best writing comes from people who know what they're talking about, which might seem like incredibly like obvious, but if you go back and you look at some of the articles that maybe do well, and you ask yourself, does this person have a reason to know anything about what they're talking about, or are they just summarizing something that they read somewhere else? And if you take that lens, which we had taken in Better Humans for a long time, like our rule was firsthand information that's blatantly obvious in the article. So, are you a doctor, an academic, a coach, a personal trainer? That's a really good start. But if you're not, and you have no experience giving advice to other people and seeing how it's received and taken up, then you should only be writing about your own experience, because that's actually kind of the cool thing to understand is, by definition, we're all experts in our own experience. But this is like maybe the first lens that I would look at is just guiding people towards developing real expertise around topics. And that's what I had kind of come here to say last time I talked to you, like, write with the book in mind. Like, if you're going to be a researcher and you want to be at the same level of people that maybe know the topic inside and out because they're professionals at it, you have to really be willing to do a massive amount of research to really go much, much deeper. That's the part of Medium that I understand the best, the part where it's kind of how-to advice on professional topics or personal topics. And I know that we already have a lot of experts on the platform. So I put this back to you. Sanim, who do you think I'm leaving out with what I just said? Because I think we should take some time to address that.
It's funny you're asking, because I wanted to follow up with something on that that I think is going to bring in a lot of clarity, because the question that was circling in my mind while we were talking, and while I was also looking at the comments section, is that I think there is a little bit of a mismatch in how a lot of writers who have been on the platform for a while have basically misinterpreted the mission or the opportunity they have on Medium, because it has become so normal to expect a certain amount of engagement, which for a lot of members also means a certain amount of generated income through their articles. And I think that's what Medium has, from my perspective, it's what I think Medium has always tried to avoid, to be that platform where people go to write a few quick articles in order to reach a few people and make money out of that article.
Right.
And I think what you just described is actually a very solid foundation for making clear that you do want to have people on the platform who know what they're talking about and who are invested not just into Medium and into growing their audience on Medium, but in their topic.
Yeah.
To me, this would also mean that the way to let's say grow your audience or succeed on Medium is to actually double down on what you know and what you want to share with the world.
Yeah.
Which I know applies to a lot of people who do have that personal experience or expertise in certain areas.
Yeah.
One thing I'm wondering about is if it makes a group of existing writers upset who are on Medium because they're passionate about writing. They have always been passionate about writing, and on Medium they have found this place to where they can just easily publish their writing and reach an audience, and ideally also make some money on the side. These are people who don't consider themselves to be experts. They like and they love writing about all sorts of different topics in different genres, poems, how-to articles, memoir kind of articles. Do you think there is, a right or wrong, and that Medium will continue or start to incentivize a certain type of writer versus the other? Because I know for right now there are very successful writers who have audiences who love them in both kind of groups. There are expert writers who are very strict on their niche and really know what they're talking about, and we also have writers who actually write about a lot of different topics and who have audiences who love them because of that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is kind of we're teasing out, and we're still trying to figure out how to talk about the difference between being distributed to the subscribers and having an open platform where anyone can write. So, so for people that have an audience that likes to hear them talk about all different topics, like, we already have tools to help them reach that audience. That's why we added the email feature to posts, right? That if they want to hear from you, you can go directly to them. But this kind of, what does it take to get the distribution, right? Like, anyone, that the idea of the open platform is anyone should be able to come and write whatever they want. It's wide open, right? What is not available to everyone for free is the distribution. So, like, Sanim, you actually hit on this thing, is like, these writers who write about all topics, they're actually experts at writing. Like, I love to hear from a lot of our top writers about their writing process. And that's the kind of thing that we would love to distribute, because, talk about big topics on Medium. We have a huge community of writers. But I don't know, like, Sanim, what's the topic that you personally are interested in, but you don't know that much about? I don't know, like what's your favorite, like, I don't know, sports team or something?
I don't know much about most things. And
exactly, right.
I think I think that's interesting, because when I started, I was tempted to write about all sorts of things, because you see something, and I think as a creator and someone who has found out that you have the possibility to publish something online, this might be the thought process for a lot of people. You see something, you hear something triggers you, you love something or you hate something, and you're like, I can write about this and I can share it with the world because it's important. I think a lot of topics are important. I'm passionate about a lot of topics that I would just never write about. Not necessarily because I didn't know much about it, but because I just think I am not the person to write about it. And because I think it makes more sense for me to write about a certain category of topics that I've learned to write about.
I think that's right. It's like, an example I might use is, like, if you wanted to write about psychology or neuroscience or something, I mean, you should, because that's part of expressing yourself. That's part of being a creative. But if you look at it from the perspective of our subscribers, do they want to hear from you about psychology and neuroscience, given that we have a huge community of therapists, academics, psychologists, that are already writing? So I think, you should expect the bar for you to get into that conversation is going to be higher, and it should be higher, like, because you have more work to do. And you know, how we accomplish that is tricky. So, that's something like that. That's going to be a big part of my work here, I think.
Mm. And I think it is so hard to also accept from the perspective of a writer, because if you start to write and you're new to a platform, you always want to have those quick wins, and you kind of need them to stick to something and stay motivated and keep publishing. And I think that's what makes it so hard, because you kind of need to accept the fact that you are new to this. And in my experience, writing and building an audience always comes with two completely different sides. One of them is, what do you actually talk about? What is the core message? What are your experiences that lead to that message? How can you present that message in a way that your readers can possibly benefit from it in the biggest possible way? And this is essentially your expertise or the message you're sharing. And the difference, the second side is, do you know how to write? And do you know how to write online and write articles that people want to read? And I think those are two completely different things that are sometimes being mixed up, and also create an unrealistic expectation among writers who just want to show up, quickly build an audience, quickly want to monetize their work. And I think a lot of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat box are also around this, like, I have been writing, or I am writing, but something has changed and I don't know how to increase my audience. I don't know how to increase my earnings, or why my stats are suddenly down. And I think it often comes down to the fact that we need to look at the work we are doing and what we can individually improve in our work, because I think you have a lot of ideas. You're sharing a lot with us, and I am excited to hear if you have any specific changes or tools in mind that you want to implement. But as someone who has been using the platform for so long, my experience has been that a lot of how a writer experiences the platform is about the actions you take and the expectations you set for yourself. And I think that's gonna stay the same and look different for each writer, and it's gonna change. For me, it has changed over the last 4 years, and it keeps changing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I assume it'll change. To go back to the raise the bar, implications of that is, one thing is, if you clear the bar, you'll make more money, right? Because we're sharing the subscription across everyone who clears our current bar. And if we raise it, I think it'll get condensed to fewer authors. And so it's actually, the reason to do that is to create the incentive. So it's worth your time to push yourself further. I think it's always going to be the case that this is a great community for new writers, because it's a great way to, get started, to test yourself, to get feedback from other people. And when you're getting started, I'm not, it might be that the world isn't ready to pay you to go through that learning curve. I certainly think our subscribers are not wanting to pay for that, right? And so we have to find some other ladder. We always have to be making that ladder to improving yourself as a writer more clear. I saw someone in the comments ask about self-publish or publications. I think the publications that we have are one of the potentially one of the key parts of that ladder. Right? So it's like you come and you publish on your own, and not that many people see it, and maybe you submit to a publication and they tell you it's not good enough yet. You got to reread our guidelines. And so that's like the first milestone that new writers can shoot for here. So I'd like to, for people that are kind of trying to climb the ladder rather than just express themselves and share it with their friends, I'd like to, obviously I'm a believer in the publications. I'd like to give them more of a role in the community that way.
That's great to hear, because I'm going to circle back to that and actually ask something that I'm personally very interested in, but let's keep that for the end. You have already mentioned that readers are what you want to focus on, because that's how you raise the bar. That's kind of the indicator that you can use to increase the quality. But of course, all these changes also affect a lot of other stakeholders. And I think that's so fascinating about Medium. You have so many groups of people. You have the readers, you have subscribed readers who actually pay to read on the platform, but we also have so many external readers who just find Medium articles out of the blue, anywhere on the internet. It could be SEO and a simple Google search, but it can also be all kinds of newsletters and distribution places. We have a huge community of writers and a community that is growing. And we have a lot of other stakeholders too, who are just interested in seeing how the platform will evolve. When you talk about raising the bar, I think that all those stakeholders are somehow going to be involved. But if we talk to writers right now, what do you think, or what would you say are some types of action that any writer listening to us right now could really reflect on and use in their own journey as a writer to contribute to that goal of raising the standard of articles being published on Medium?
Well, I mean, first, like, I understand that we have to get our incentives aligned, and like we have to be doing a better job of rewarding the people that do that. But yeah, this is a really big question. This is almost the old coaching part of me. Like, how it's not just, I'm not just here to announce like, hey, our new focuses are, our focuses are this and that. It's, I want to start that conversation about what are the ways in which an author can raise their own bar, and why would they? How do they benefit? Last time I was here, I said write with a book in mind, because I think I've seen so many people make careers off of having their own book, and that's the kind of example of the level of effort. Like, an example I give from my own career is a long time ago when I was just a programmer. So I got the opportunity to write a programming book about a topic that I didn't actually know anything about. And it's a kind of a strange story about how I got that opportunity. But I just dug in, and it took me 6 months, and it was incredibly painful to do. But by the end of writing the book and submitting it to the publisher, I knew I was an expert at that topic, because that's what happens when you really dive deep. And so when you research a topic for a day, I don't think you can claim to have any true expertise. But when you focus in and say, this is going to be my focus for months at a time, then yeah, it's not that hard. Like, all of us have that potential to be one of the smartest people in the world on a topic if we devote a few months of time to it. And so I was using the book last time I was here as a focusing, like focus on a book, and then you can your writing will suddenly start to make sense. But that's just one of many ways, right? I think that a lot of people write for their existing career. Like, what sort of writing is going to make kind of appear like a portfolio that makes you a more appealing person for whatever your profession is. A lot of people who get new jobs, especially bigger jobs, they write in order to attract people to come work with them. I think writing as you learn a new profession. I mean, I'm talking a lot about professions because it's like part that I know the most about. I don't have a lot to say yet on fiction and poetry because I'm not there yet. I mean, I came from one side and I still have a lot to learn on the other side. But for the side I know that I want to share what I can. So people that are learning something new and want to give back. I mean, sometimes learning something new because they're about to use it, right? Like sometimes that is a better way for you to learn it yourself, and sometimes the beginner's mind actually is the um, uh, the more insightful explanation of a topic.
Mm.
Um, I think that's a start, and I'm hoping that by starting the conversation with you, because you spend so much time coaching writers to be better, I'm hoping that I spark something with you over the coming weeks and months that turns into how you talk to the authors that you work with.
Yeah, I think that's all incredible opportunities, and I hope to continue to be that let's call it bridge, and also share
Yeah.
my experiences in depth and as clearly as possible. One thing you already did mention, and that I love to hear, is that you do believe that publications are an important factor of Medium. There's been a lot of conversations about publications being dead, publications not mattering anymore, and a lot of that has just been going on in the last couple of years. I think a lot of people are confused by the role of publications, and I'd like to talk about that. But before I do, there is one thing that I am really curious about. You have grown 3 of the largest publications, and as far as I know, you've actively been part of how they have been operating still over the last years.
Yeah.
What is going to happen to the better publications now?
Better humans, better marketing, better programming. This is what I think. I think that Medium will acquire them and run them. I have agreement on my way in on what the price is, so that I'm not negotiating with myself. So it's a probable thing to do. But I feel like I have to be really careful because I learned this. There's this balancing act where I think what made me a compelling candidate to be the CEO is because I use the product so heavily. And I think that's a challenge for the team here, that how do they learn how Medium works without using it? And so I got a lot, all the value that I'm bringing in is the experience I had running these publications. On the other hand, like I had the experience of the owned and operated pubs coming in, the editorial pubs, and like kind of overshadowing all of us. And I hated that. So the balancing act is that we need to bring these pubs in, give them really clear, narrowly defined goals so that all the other pubs know that we're not going to try to compete with them. In fact, we should have no advantages because the point is to learn. And like, how does our system work? And so we should be in the same boat as everyone else. But that it's also the case that those publications serve roles in the community already that we don't want those roles to disappear. Better programming, especially, is a real hub for things that happen on the platform. So if I were to guess, I think we would focus better programming on being more of a hub that reaches out beyond what's published inside of it, which we already do. Like Anupam, the editor there, does a really good job of finding the articles that aren't in better programming and sending those out in his newsletter. I think I'm very interested in SEO. This is, maybe we'll get to this, but I feel like we're not paying what we should for external traffic. And so I want a case study that we can do ourselves that's very SEO focused. And I think better marketing can be that. I like coming up to this, I'd been bookmarking all of the articles that sort of like fed into the definitive information around marketing tools and tactics. And I wanted to give an example of what it would be to run a publication that was really focused on that. Like, to me, SEO means you write the definitive answer to something, right? And it's less story and more hard and deep information. Better Humans, I think, is we're going to focus more on experts. Like, we've changed our model a couple times to fit Medium's Medium's kind of changing platform dynamics. And right now I think our volume is like fairly high, and I think we're going to bring it back down to really, it can be the first publication that raises the bar. So I expect them to come in. That's the short answer, though. And
you mentioned your personal interest for SEO and how that might be one of the rooms for improvement. Is that something you see in the, I mean, that's I think one of the things a lot of writers would also be interested to know. And that's a comment I saw, people saying we bring in external people by creating stories. Do you think it's going to be possible for Medium to create an incentive structure where writers also do get incentivized or paid or in any kind of way rewarded for the external traffic they bring in? Because right now that's not really possible, just due to the fact that we're running on a membership model, which is what Medium's, I believe, core strength is right now. Is that something you've had in mind, have been wondering about for a while?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, just think of it from the perspective of the health of the platform. The authors that bring in external readers are the authors that grow the pie for all of us. So in a way, they should be the most highly rewarded authors here, right? And we should all support that, because that's what we want. We want more subscribers, more readers, so that what we write can reach more people. So I think that I just think that the forces of the platform demand that we dig into that. Specifically, I can't promise anything, because all I've been able to get into so far was kind of, well, how valuable are certain types of traffic. And I got far enough into that to say, yeah, absolutely, SEO traffic is valuable enough that we can create a meaningful incentive around it. But I just had, just really started officially with the whole team on Tuesday, was when I was announced to the company. And I just had my first meeting with our product leaders who set the product roadmap. And we were ready to do a lot of things, but we weren't ready to put external incentives onto the roadmap. So that's where we are. It's very interesting to me, but I haven't put it on we haven't put it on the roadmap yet.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's so interesting to also understand what you've been up to as someone who has, as you said, spent so much time on the platform over the last decade, really. So interesting for me to hear all these different perspectives that I personally didn't even think about. There's actually one more question that I'd like to ask, and then I would love to dig into some of the comments and see if we can take a few moments to answer some of the audience's questions. In your article about the announcement, you mentioned that you will be seeking conversations and giving your best to actually listen to the community of readers as well as writers.
Right.
You also mentioned that you have been a heavy user of Medium yourself. I know that you've had kind of an experiment running a daily newsletter, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
How are you planning to keep that conversation going? If people want to stay up to date on what you're sharing or doing, what's the best way for them to stay connected to you and really get the first-hand information? Or what's the ideal case for you? How do you want to stay connected to your writers?
I mean, I think I've been telling people everywhere, and I think it's demonstrated here, is I'm chatty. I like to talk to people in all the ways. And you might have noticed in my post, my announcement post, I responded to at least half of the people. I tried every time someone clearly deserved to post, and then at least for the first day, tried to give everyone a response, and I definitely read every single response on that post. So I'm expecting that I'll post more. And I mean, this is self-serving, but follow me on Medium, right? This is like I mean, I became the CEO to build my following here, I guess. But seriously, like, I'm someone who writes about my process, and partly because I like the feedback. How it's a kind of an open question. How are we going to more officially get more feedback from the community? But I know there's a real desire from key people here to have more conversation, because honestly, like, it's not just me that needs to talk to you, right? Like, the whole company benefits from more conversation and um, more connection. I mean, um, it's good. It's good across the board, and I think it'll be good for the community to hear from us more and understand how much we care about making this a great place to publish.
Mm. Thank you so much for starting with that kind of also setting that expectation for the community, because I think that's really important. A lot of
Yeah.
people I know have had that feeling that they are not being heard, that it's really hard to even get in touch with anyone who would listen to them, even if that was not true. It was just hard to get that feedback. And I feel like and believe that a lot of writers who are watching us now, or who have read what you've written and published on Tuesday, that they feel seen and appreciated in a different way now, maybe even for the first time, simply because you have such a different perspective and you're coming in as someone who has been part of the community in various ways, whether that's as someone running and managing a publication, someone
Right.
being in that conversation. I would love to have a look at a few of the comments we received. Is that fine for you?
Yeah, let's do it.
I saw one right now saying, is there a way we can write to you? I thought that one way to keep the conversation with you right now would be commenting on what you are sharing, as you just said. I don't know if that's correct. That's the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah, Medium has a response feature. I'm going to talk by writing on Medium, and so I'd like to hear from people by responding on Medium. And there's a kind of a second reason too, which is I think the community really benefits from hearing what other people are saying too. So I'd rather get feedback publicly that way than in my email. And then, as I said, we have other work to do to make more official channels open, but we're going to do that.
I just saw something that I have never thought about, interestingly. Someone said, as a reader, I want to be able to better reward the stories I love and that have impacted me, for example, through badges or tips. I know other platforms are doing that. Has that ever crossed your mind, or is that something you have on your agenda?
It's on our agenda to be constantly experimenting and maybe talking more about those experiments. So my understanding is we have a tips experiment that we will release shortly, and but it's very experimental. It's not the kind of thing that we are wanting to run out and tell the New York Times about. It's just, but we're constantly looking for ways. A lot of the work we're going to do is doing the obvious stuff, like the basic that we all know by writing here. There's some basics that need to be fixed or upgraded, but there's always room for some level of experimentation. And there was a tips feature in the works before I got here, and I heard yesterday that it's close to some level of beta release. So we'll see.
That's so exciting. I think that's going to be a great way to get feedback.
Yeah.
For writers. That's exciting. Thanks for sharing. I I think there's been some confusion about you talking about actually being an expert in the topics you write about. So the question was, what is an expert really? A writer with a lot of followers, or a person that can show expertise and credentials?
I mean, expertise and credentials, and you see it in the writing too. The follower count doesn't matter at all. And in fact, this is one of the strengths of Medium. By having a lot of different curators on the platform, including ourselves, that can give a boost to things, is a place where someone who has no followers but a lot of expertise can come. I want to, one thing about being here is we're kind of testing some of our messaging, and I want to say something really important, which is my experience in other media is when you say we're looking for experts, you only get men. But when you say you're looking for people to share their expertise, it's much less, there's much less gender bias. So like, this is like a key thing. You don't have to think of yourself as an expert. Think of yourself as, well, what do you know a lot about? And so, as an editor,
that's so interesting.
I mean, that's an aside. So like, we'll have to polish that a little bit so that it doesn't bias in a way that actually ruins the quality. But as an editor, the thing too is it's very quick to read a piece and know whether the person knows what they're, has expertise in what they're writing, because they tend to just write about how they know it, right? And I don't know, I saw some piece came through Better Humans the other day. It was submitted, super well written, and it took a well-known psychology experiment and then extrapolated all this life advice out of it. And it's like, okay, this person's never applied. You can just tell in the writing, the person had never applied the experience to themselves, had never applied it to other people, and has no professional background in the advice. And to make it worse, this person doesn't know that this well-known psychology experiment had been debunked, like completely debunked. And that's the kind of information, like that to me is like great. It's like great title, great writing, terrible for us to boost it because it's wrong. It's just flat out wrong, bad information that happened to sound good. And that's more what I mean about change, like raising the bar, is getting rid of some of that information that it's not right. How are we helping the world when we distribute that stuff? And I think honestly that person wouldn't have written it if we weren't creating incentives for them to write it. So
you talked a bit about distribution, and I know this is probably going to be a hard question to answer, and there is probably no complete answer to it. But I have seen a lot of questions around curation, and I just want to see if there is anything you want to share with the community, because Christina, for example, says we need to address curation and how these decisions are made. And it seems like this is kind of a black box for so many people who just don't understand what curation is good for and what they should pay attention to. You have probably reviewed you have reviewed and read and seen thousands of articles over the last few years. Is there anything you do want to share with the community, even though there is probably no complete answer anyone can provide?
Well, in this question, someone else asked a curation question that I want to answer first, which is like, I get curated and it doesn't seem to matter. To me, that's the first thing that's a problem. We had that experience too as publishers, which is there was a point in which so much got curated that being curated didn't affect your distribution really at all. So I think that's kind of the coming, although I haven't had a chance to dig into curation beyond that. So kind of to go to Christina's question, how are these decisions being made? It's like, I'm like, why are so many of these decisions being made? And so on the one hand, my experience is like we're doing way too much curation into distribution, but then it sounds like we also have these gaps where we don't curate anything. And I could imagine that happening for various reasons. And yeah, we need to dig into that. It kind of is going to depend topic by topic. I think that there's signals that we can look for to give something a boost. I mentioned publications is probably one of the obvious ones, and but it won't be the only one. Um, so that that's where we are there. I mean, do we need to address curation, all caps? Yeah, absolutely. This is not where we should be.
I think or I hope that's going to help a few of the writers watching just understand how big of a problem this actually is. That it is on, as far as I can tell, that it's something Medium has always been working on. But I think it's just some of those processes need so much time to be settled. One more thing that I just saw, and that I've been hearing a lot, to be honest, in the last few weeks, is editing on mobile. I guess you have heard it too. I know a lot of writers are frustrated about it. Is there anything you want to share about the editing feature on mobile not existing anymore?
It was the number one feature request in my post. It was like the number one thing people said in the responses that was about software and features. And of course I had noticed it too. I was like, why are we doing this? And so I did get the backstory yesterday. It had more to do with practicality than anything else, because there was and I think a misunderstanding, honestly, about how valuable it is. So part of, as I said, I talked to our product team yesterday, and they knew that this was a possibility to put it back in, and I shared that we looked actually at the old usage of it and the feedback we were getting, and the strength of sentiment about that feedback, and it won't be instantaneous. It actually will require new work. The old editor can't just be turned back on, unfortunately. So yes, I expect that it'll come back. I'm sorry that it went away. I want us to be a company where you can rely on our features. And if you can't rely on it, I want to be clear. So I said earlier about tips, that'll come out, but you shouldn't rely on it yet. And we'll label it that way. That's an experiment. But these other tools, like access to being able to write from mobile, I want to be a company that gives all of the authors and publishers here, a sense that they can rely on us. And I think that taking that away broke that confidence in us. And plan is to bring it back for sure.
Awesome. I hope that a lot of people who have been discouraged because of the editing feature not existing anymore will be able to continue to use it in the future. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. I guess that brings up a lot of hope for so many people. I know there are a lot more comments. I will go through the comments after the session and see if there is any input from my side, any kind of support that I can provide. Tony, you will have the link as well if you want to scroll through the comments and see what people have been throwing up. There's been a lot, and thank you all for the conversation here. So if you do want to check out, you will have the possibility to. But beyond that, I really want to say thank you so much for taking the time to do this and to show up here to chat with us. I can only imagine how packed your schedule is right now and how many things you have to arrange and have to think of. So I, as a writer, truly appreciate that you took the time and that you have had that genuine conversation with me and the community. So thank you. Congratulations again, and
I feel
all
great
the
about it.
best. For me, it is an honor to have you here. It has always been, you know that. But it was a pleasure to talk to you in this scenario specifically, of course, as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thank you also to, I mean, you and the authors are what make this platform, and hopefully it was useful enough that you'll have me back. That's one of my hopes as well. So thank you, Sanim. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.